Welcome to another Open Dev Talk. I'm Kevin, and today I'll show you how you can connect the car data from your fleet, push to an AWS S3 bucket. First of all, S3 buckets, the question is, what are they? They are object storage buckets, basically like Dropbox, but much more sophisticated, of course, for files and objects and data in particular. So it's a very versatile service offered by Amazon. It's very popular, it's being used by many, and that's also the reason why we chose that as one of the next integration points for us, where we can serve and deliver push data coming from connected cars. So we already had MQTT live already, and now we've just added S3 as one option as well. And in this session, I'll go through from beginning to end how you set that up. So I will show you and walk you through all the steps that are needed. And basically, by following along later on, you should be able to get your things up and running as well. The best part of it is zero code needed, more or less, to get this setup working. So that's one of the nice parts of it. So let's start with looking at how it all works out, and then at the end, I'll also explain a few technicalities and details what's going on under the hood. So let me share my screen, and we'll go into one of the familiar places in all of our Open Dev Talks, and that's the High Mobility console, where we manage all of the different data containers. Let me bring it up. Just a second. Here we go. Okay. So now I'm in the console. I'm using my private test account that I use for testing purposes. And the first thing I'll do is I'll go into develop mode. So although the S3 streaming, it's supported in our live environment with live cars, as well as in the sandbox, so with our simulator, I will show you currently how it works in sandbox. And in the end, you can do the same thing in the live environment. Let me go in and continue. I have a few the container set up. I will just use one of the existing ones. Feel free to create a new one. We know how it works. You basically can create a container, edit the permissions that you want to get access to from your fleet, and you see a breakdown of the different cars that are supported. So the new thing here is a section called data streaming. So data streaming is the section where you can manage the data delivery. It used to be part where you just had MQTT settings, so that's still here. So you can see you can create MQTT certificates, which are needed to connect to our MQTT broker to receive push data live. And now the new option is that you can also choose AWS S3 storage as the push destination. What I will do, first I have to set up an S3 bucket. So it's not the case that we are storing the data for you anywhere. It is your own AWS account where the data gets pushed to. So our data platform is in AWS, makes the integration very seamless, because from our data platform, from our environment, we can push right into your account to your S3 bucket. So the data will always still be stored by you. It's your container, and you manage that data container. We just push data to that bucket, and that's it. So first thing I need to do, I need to create an S3 bucket. So if I go into our documentation, we also cover it here step by step, basically describing a bit about the use cases when you might need it. I'll get to that a bit later. How the files are stored, and then the kind of step action step itself, which is to set up an S3 bucket. So I will do all of these steps right away, but you can always go back and find these instructions here. I'm already in my AWS account. I have an account for testing purposes for different things, and I go into the S3 service. Once here, and choose to create a new bucket, and then enter a bucket name. So the bucket name in AWS, it's always has to be globally unique. So if I just try to write something like test, it will fail because it needs to be unique. So let me come up with something that put in KB Open Dev Talk S3 streaming. Let's put our push delivery like that. AWS region, this is important. So we only support pushing to EU West 1, so the AWS region in Ireland. So I'll keep that set. And anything else can just be left as is. Make sure to have this block. It's always by default, but S3 buckets can be used also to host different websites and so on, static websites. So just make sure you have it all public access blocked, because you don't need to provide public access for us to be able to stream data into it. I will show you soon how come that is. So I'll go ahead and create bucket. And I get this set up. Let me open it here. So once I have it, so obviously it shows all the objects in the bucket. It's empty, and not surprisingly. And then I have here permissions. So in the permissions tab, it's possible to edit the bucket policies. So here is the place where you can then actually grant access that we from or HighMobility can then push data into the bucket. So let me hit edit. And I can enter a policy. So this is using the standard AWS schema, JSON schema for writing policies. And in our docs, we have a specific section, copy-paste section, basically, for doing that. So let me copy the snippet. I go back here, just paste it. So there are a few placeholders here. One is the principal. So the principal is basically referencing to a role, AWS role on the HighMobility side that defines further information about these permissions. And we have two different ones. We have one for sandbox and one for live data. So as I'm currently setting this up for a sandbox container, I will just copy paste it. There we go. So I copy paste that in. This is for sandbox, and then I need to put in the bucket name, and that's actually a bucket name that for the bucket I just created. So I can just go in here and paste the bucket name twice here. Here we go. So this is all that's needed. I can go ahead and save the changes and successfully edited. That's good. So the bucket permissions have been set. So that's more or less it. I have the bucket set up. Now going back to the console here, I can now go ahead and configure the bucket itself. So I chose S3, I hit save. I want to have an S3 bucket, and then we ask for the bucket name. Now we have a second step here. The reason is that, of course, you could enter the bucket, but if some reason, for instance, the permissions are set incorrectly, and you start to get, for instance, live vehicle data and it would fail, that would be a really bad thing. So what we do with the first thing when you configure your data container to push data to an S3 bucket, we make sure that the integration is up and running. So we hit test, and now it said integration successful. So that went pretty fast. It can take a bit more longer time. And then it also says that a file was pushed to your S3 bucket. Because how we're actually testing it is that we are sending a test file to the bucket. And so if I go back here and refresh, this file should also show up in the bucket. And here we go. We have the file name here, or not the file name, but the folder name. The folder name is actually equal to the app ID. So it's basically just the same app ID that's in here. I will speak a bit more about the topic itself. But I go here, I'll go into the test folder. It has the date, and we have the file here as well. So if I would open this file, it would just say like that it's a test delivery. There's no need for me to look into it right now. I can do that as we look live data, but basically it created this file, and that's the confirmation you need to know that the integration is up and running. So first thing is done. You can also see the bucket name here. If you want to change it at one later point, you can also do that. But now let's try to get some data into it. I have some simulators already linked, which means that the clearance, so in my case, fleet clearance has been done for it. You can also, if you work for a B2C, so a consumer-oriented application, you can also go through the consent flow, and that's what starts streaming. So we have several open dev talks about that already. But basically, you have to have a vehicle that has an active consent to receive the data. So here I have this active consent with the simulator, and I can go ahead and start testing it. I open up, I go into the capabilities, and I choose to just to filter it here based on the application permissions, and also here the capabilities. So now I'm seeing the diagnostics capability and all the different data points that have been granted to my specific data container. So if I go ahead and, for instance, change something, we have here odometer 900. I can edit that to 901. You can see also the simulator then pushes the data odometer 901 miles. Oh, we can actually maybe change that to kilometers. Here we go, and update it a few times. So we have 902. Maybe we go to 910. I'm doing some changes here, and I can also change something else like the fuel level has gone down to 41.9%, even down to 38.9, and the engine coolant temperature is rising to 50 degrees. So now I have a few data updates there. That's pretty neat. So if I go into the S3 bucket now, should I see the data? Well, not yet, because if I refresh here, you can see I still have the test file, so to speak. It's here, but I don't have any data. So there is a bit of a delay to receive S3 data to S3 bucket, and the reason for that is that if you go into this, go why S3 can be a good way to integrate. So if we look at the main kind of highlights, this you can also inspect later on to see if it matches your use case. But the beauty of S3 or the integration is that, as I mentioned, there's no technical effort. So if you just want to get that data and evaluate it, for instance, from your fleet, you can do so, and there's no code needed. So that's, of course, a very easy way to start out. Second is that even if S3 is such an let's say widely used storage option, that it has so many integrations. So it has a lot of the integrations to different big data platforms, to different analytics platforms, and so on. So you can easily kind of plug that further to get it into the S3 pushed, and then as a next step, you could also get that data into another analytics platform that you're using, and then analyzing it there. Again, no code. So it's a great way as a middle step for those type of use cases. Also, when you're scaling, S3 can be really helpful, because even though it's good for when you evaluate, it's also really good for scaling, because it has that type of infrastructure behind from AWS, and also an efficient way of delivering data. So that's why, if I come back to that question of real time, so why it takes a bit of time to kind of deliver that data, it is because the data is being batched. So the data is being batched every 5 minutes, a new file is created. And in that file, there's all the JSON data from all of the vehicles that generated data in the last 5 minutes. So each one new file is created every 5 minutes. Of course, if there's any data incoming. If there's no data incoming, no file is being created. There's also an upper limit to files. So if it reaches something like 10,000 data updates, it also kind of closes that file and opens a new one, even if 5 minutes hasn't passed. So there are these kind of batching mechanism that goes on. But this batching is also very much kind of native to AWS and Lambda, a different service from AWS, and also with S3 Bucket. So it makes it really easy to use it. And if you go to a larger scale for fleets, it's really efficient, because if you don't need to get every single data update real time pushed to you, it's okay to have a latency maybe of 5 minutes. Then it's actually a really good option, and it's really probably also a very cost-effective option to consume data compared to other services that you might have to, or computing you might have to do for getting all the time live MQTT data. So it has, of course, some trade-offs, but also a lot of benefits. So these are it really depends then in the end. If you look at streaming data, if MQTT that we offer is the best option, real time, every single data update coming in, or if the S3 option is the better one. So they are very complementary, so to speak, that you can both, looking at both of them, you can really find the best option for you. Just have in mind that you can only have one specific integration point active at the same time. So if you choose to choose S3, you cannot get MQTT data and vice versa. But you can always choose change between them. So if you have chosen one option, you can always go back and say, okay, I was testing out S3, but now I changed back to MQTT for the same data container. No problem to do that change. So now for the object structure itself and what you should be seeing. So here's an example of data that's coming in. So in that each file, you will have an object or an array, basically, because you can have up to 10,000 data updates, and each object is one data update. So here it says the VIN, and it's all like a unique message ID for that specific JSON message, or even a data update. It says which properties, so the odometer, you get the timestamp when the data was generated in the car, and also the data value itself. And the path, basically where you find it, you can see here we have also a breakdown. So first it's bucket name, of course, the app ID, the Auto API version is kernel 13. So basically it's always that case, year, month, day, time. And then at the end, we also just added an identifier. Even if you get really a lot of data, that the same file is created, same kind of time file is created at the same time, because we might have also parallel batching operations. If it's really large fleets, you always have a unique identifier for each file, so no file will ever overwrite another file with different data updates. And lastly, when we come to the data payload itself, we have just recently added a reference here on the push API. This is valid regardless of S3 or MQTT. You can go in and have a look at how data is being structured. So if I would go to door state, for instance, you can see here the MQTT host have all the different data points. So you can also expand here the payload and see how the data is being structured. So for instance, doors has a location. So if it's a front left, front right, rear right, and also lock state if it's unlocked or locked. And at the end for each, we also have an examples here that you can see how the data looks like. So whatever permission you have chosen, you can easily in the documentation see how that the data value of that push data should look like. So that should have been 5 minutes now. So fingers crossed that we should have now some new data coming in for our app ID here. So open it up and we see we have a new folder. So before we only had the test folder, now we have level 13, which is the Auto API version. We got 2 files even. So let me go ahead and open the first one and download it. So let me go ahead and open this file, or actually show it. Okay, I will just bring it up to the terminal. Just give me 1 second. Here we go. Let me share a different screen so you can hang also come along. Here we go. And now I share the terminal, and we should be able to have a look what's inside of the S3 bucket. Here we have it. We are in the folder. Here we have the JSON file that was just downloaded from S3. Let's just open it up and then type it to JQ for nice formatted JSON. And this is the contents that we can see. Yeah, I'll start from the top. ABC, we can see where the first update 901 miles. So that was the first data updates we did in the vehicle. And then we had 901 kilometers for the odometer. We changed it to 902 kilometers, and then even 910 kilometers. So all of those data updates are coming in nicely, each one with their own timestamp when exactly that change was done in the simulator. And the fuel level, which we changed, is coming in as well from 41.9% to 38, yeah, more or less 38, 39%, and coolant temperature set to 50. So all the data updates you can see from the simulator, they have nicely come in here. And in the end, that's the same way you would get the data for the live vehicles. So if you have that consent, it would drive around with the car. You would also get those updates directly to your bucket, exactly the same way. So hope you enjoy that. well, small demo. We think that the S3 integration will open some new opportunities and definitely, again, lower the friction to get started with connected car data. No code, just a few clicks, the configuration and the data will be there. But also, if in the end, if you want to scale, you can also use that as a really nice option.